Hey there, nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Chiefskate, and welcome to another episode of Way of the Underhive. This series is dedicated to helping brand new players to Necromunda build their starting rosters and learn more about the game mechanics of their favorite gangs. And on today's episode, we'll be taking another look at the Corpse Grinder cult and offering starter rosters that you can use in your future campaigns of Necromunda Ash Wastes. Since Games Workshop has released the Ash Waste expansion, a lot of players are now taking their gangs and heading out into the dusty, chemical-infested wilds of the Ash Waste. So because of that, conditions in the Ash Wastes are very, very different than the Underhive. So because of that, going through the different houses, going through the different gang lists, and actually adjusting them to use in your Ash Waste campaigns is going to be extremely helpful and could be extremely daunting for brand new players. And that's what this whole series is about. It's about helping out brand new players, get their starting gangs going so that way they can start doing their campaigns. So because of that, I will be going through the Corpse Grinder cult, this time through the perspective of what they would be like to use these guys out in the Ash Wastes. So because of that, there will be some adjustments as to some of the strengths and weaknesses that this gang has. We will also be talking about the different fighters and what roles they will play in the Ash Waste, and we'll also provide you with 3 starting rosters that you can use to begin your Ash Waste campaign using Corpse Grinder cults. And each of those will be built using the standard 1400 credit rule in order to build those gangs up. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get this video started by talking about the strengths and weaknesses of playing a Corpse Grinder cult. So first of all, let's go and talk about the strengths of playing a Corpse Grinder cult in the Ash Waste. So first of all, just like they were back when they were in the Underhive, they are powerful close combat fighters. And because of that, whenever they engage in close combat, it's pretty much one-sided, kind of favoring for the Corpse Grinder cults. They got powerful hand-to-hand combat weapons, they got excellent stats as well as skills to help them achieve those goals in close combat. But now that we can actually mount these guys in vehicles, they also have very powerful heavy weapon options that they can use to their vehicles. One of the problems of playing an Ash Waste, playing a Corpse Grinder cult in the Underhive was that they didn't have access to a lot of heavy weaponry. They didn't have very many shooting options, unless of course you were talking about their initiates. But now that you can mount heavier weapon options on vehicles, that kind of solves that problem for the Corpse Grinders. So now they're deadly at close combat as well as with heavy weapons from their vehicles as well. Another big strength for these guys is that masks. So their butchers, cutters, and skinners all have masks. Not only do they add armor buffs to them, to their armor saves, as well as from their initiates, but for the butchers, skinners, as well as for the cutters, opponents must either pass a willpower or a cool test to see if they can either shoot at you or even attack in close combat. Now, most cool and willpower stats are not very good for most gangs, so because of that, it just adds additional protection for your fighters that pose a distance to fight your enemies. So that part is also excellent about playing a Corpse Grinder cult. Now, another strength that they have as well is that there is nothing random about their character advancements as they go through a campaign. Butchers, cutters, as well as skinners can all can spend their experience points in the way they want to. The reason why is because butchers are leaders and cutters are champions, but skinners are specialists, so they can spend their points as they want. At the same time, initiates are counted as juvie level fighters, so since they're considered juvies, they can also spend their experience points as they want to as well. So that's another cool thing about the Corpse Grinder cults. They can actually, choose their own path when they level up. So these are some of the many strengths of playing a Corpse Grinder cult. Now, at the same time, the Corpse Grinder cults do have a lot of strengths going for them going into the Ash Waste, but they also have some severe weaknesses as well. And one of the biggest weaknesses that they had is that certain aspects of playing a Corpse Grinder cult, some of those game mechanics were excellent for being used in the Underhive. The problem though is that some of those skills are not as good in the Ash Waste and can actually be a severe handicap. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. When it comes to your Corpse Grinder cults, they had a lot of game mechanics that helped them out with movement to move rapidly across the battlefield to engage their enemies in close combat. They got bonuses for charges, they can make multiple charges, etc. The problem though is that in the Underhive, most of the combat that the Corpse Grinder cults would use would be in pretty close confined spaces, what military people would call close combat, close quarters battles, what they would actually call it. The environment is very conducive for that. They're fighting in urban environments for the most part. They're fighting in narrow hallways and walkways, fighting in the Zone Mortalis tables, very, very much close in combat for the most part. The problem though is that we're not fighting in the Underhive anymore. We're now fighting in the Ash Waste. The Ash Waste have huge stretches of open spaces full of wasteland, and that is going to be death for a Corpse Grinder cult. And the reason why is because they don't have a lot of access to cover, which will protect them from being shot at. They're still very, very prone to being pinned, which is death to a corpse grinder cult gang. So having these new open areas with very little terrain is going to be a lot of problems for the Ash Waste guys. So a lot of those movement characteristics and buffs that they got in the Underhive will not be as advantageous as they were in the Underhive as they'll be in the Ash Waste. So in the Ash Waste, that's going to actually be against them. At the same time, even though you can get heavier weapons for your vehicles, right off the bat, you don't have very many shooting options for your gang. So because of that, it is going to handicap them a little bit when compared with the firepower that other gangs will be able to bring with them when they go out the Ash Waste. And like I mentioned before, pinning is still a horrible, horrible situation for corpse grinder cults, because their goal is to charge in close combat, which is a double action. But if they get pinned, they can never make that action. So it's still going to be a huge problem that corpse grinder cults will have to mitigate against when going out into the Ash Wastes. So now that we're done talking about the gang's strengths and weaknesses, let's go ahead and talk about their individual fighters. Alright, so the very first fighter we're going to talk about is the Butcher, which is the leader of a corpse grinder cult. These fighters cost 130 credits, so let's go ahead and talk about their stats. So they have 5-inch movement as well as 2+ weapon skill and a 4+ ballistic skill. They have 4 strength, 4 toughness, 2 wounds. They also have 4 initiative as well as 2 attacks. They have 5+ for leadership, 5+ for cool, 5+ for willpower, as well as 7+ for intelligence. So let's go and talk about the Butchers real quick. So when it comes to the Butcher also has access to certain skills. Their primary skills are brawn, combat, as well as leadership, while their secondary skills are ferocity as well as savagery. Savagery being the specific skill for the corpse grinders, as well as savant for these guys. Now your Butcher is a pure close combat killing machine with a strength 4, toughness 4, 2 attacks base. They charge into close combat. They're going to get 3+ for their attacks. At the same time, you give them paired weapons that can put them up to 4 attacks in close combat. Not to mention, they also have the special rule first in the fray. When this fighter makes a chargeable action, they may add D6 to the distance that they can move rather than D6. So that's going to help them out. Plus, they got the terrifying rule where opponents will have to pass a willpower test to even attack them in the first place. So they got a lot going for them. Now when it comes to the Butcher, I suggest you focus on leadership skills for your Butchers. The reason why is because they're already kit out to kill in close combat to begin with. What you want to use these guys for are for group activations. So my suggestion is to always put commanding presence on these guys always when they start out. The reason why is because they got enough buffs in terms of combat. What they really need to do is be able to activate large groups of fighters that way they can charge in, get stuck in, and cause problems that way as well. Another problem with the Butcher, though, is that they also have no ferocity skills, so pinning them will still be a problem. In the ferocity tree, you could use Nerves of Steel to escape pinning, but that is not available for the Butcher, so it can cause them some problems later on down the line. Now, here's another thing that I have questions about with the corpse grinder cult specifically. Alright, so traditionally, Butchers, Cutters, and Skinners don't use ranged weapons. And the reason why is because their equipment says, and I'm going to quote from the rulebook from the Book of Ruin, it says, a Butcher is equipped with a Butcher's mask and plate armor. They may only be armed with close combat weapons. Now, armed with close combat weapons. That's assuming that you're purchasing close combat weapons for them. The question I have is, can a Butcher, even though you can't buy close combat weapons for them specifically, can they operate heavy weapons on vehicles? That's the thing I have a question about, because if that's the case, some people might say no, and that's perfectly fine to say that. But if some people say yes, that means you can use that 4-up ballista skill to operate the heavy weapons on board a vehicle. So a Butcher could actually fulfill 2 different roles. They can fulfill close combat and leadership support very well, and with that 4-up ballista skill, while it might not be that great, it's still pretty good. You got a 50% chance of hitting your opponents. And there's some pretty powerful weapons you can put on the vehicles. That can make it super deadly as well. In my campaign, I'm going to say yes, you can actually have Butchers operate heavy weapons on a vehicle, because you're not buying that weapon for them per se. It's just on the vehicle. It just happened to operate the weapon on the vehicle, if that makes sense. So I'm going to say that yes, you can. Now, I can understand if you want to talk to your campaign arbitrator, they may disagree, and that's perfectly fine. It's their campaign. They can do what they want. But for my gaming group, for my campaign, I say yes, you can, because just that's how real life works as well. Alright, so the next fighter we're going to talk about is the Cutter, which is the champion for this gang. These guys cost 90 credits apiece, and you can have up to 3 of these guys in a gang as well. I should be mentioning that as well. Now, for their stats, they have a 5-inch movement, 3+ weapon skill, 5+ ballistic skill. They have 4 strength, 3 toughness, 2 wounds. They have 4+ initiative, 2 attacks. They have 6 leadership, 6 cool, 7 willpower, as well as 8 intelligence. When it comes to the skill axis that the cutter can access, they have brawn as well as combat, as well as savagery for their primaries, with cunning, ferocity, as well as leadership for their secondaries. Now, the cutter is a top-tier close combat fighter. They're almost on par with their butcher leaders, almost on par with Goliath fighters as well, except that they have a toughness of 3 instead of toughness of 4. But still, not slouches in close combat either. Plus, they have the special rule Dervish, which means that when this fighter makes a fight basic action using a weapon with a versatile trait, their vision arc extends to 360, so they can fight everybody at a 360-degree circle. Not to mention, you can also take 3 of these guys in a gang as well. Plus, they have the terrifying rule attached to them too. So your opponents will need to take psychology tests before they can even attack this guy with range combat or close combat as well. Now, as always, you always want to equip this guy with the versatile weapon. The weapon I suggest that you actually use for this guy is the one that basically comes in all the box sets every single time that you buy corpse grinders. All right, that weapon's going to be the Rotary Flensing saw, I believe is what it's called. Yeah, Rotary Flensing saw. That's the weapon you want to use for this guy, as always. And it's really going to help out in the Ash Waste, and let me explain why. So first of all, it does have the versatile trait, but the versatile trait range on this weapon is 4 inches. They're going to be able to hit everybody within 4 inches in 360-degree circle. Very, very powerful. Now, there's a -1 to hit against because of that, but you also get +1 to your strength, so that's going to make this cutter strength 5. It has -2 to the armor save and armor penalty to your opponent as well, so you're dropping the armor by 2. And it also causes 2 damage. It's also got the shred special rule as well, which is always cool to have being used for your weapons like that. So that's the part that's nice about that. Now, if you're wondering what a shred is, basically it says if you roll the wound a weapon, the roll a natural 6, armor penetration of the weapon is doubled, which is actually kind of cool. Now, the reason why I bring up this weapon specifically is because of a skill that's going to be different for your cutters. Usually, when you had your cutters in the Underhive, I would suggest that you would use Slaughterborn. Well, Slaughterborn ones, where every single time they inflict unsaved wound, they increase their movement characters by 1 inch, which is really good to use in the Underhive, but not necessarily out in the Ash Wastes. In my opinion, the blue chip skill that's going to help out your cutters in the Ash Waste is Killing Blow. Now, I'm going to quote what this skill says right off the rulebook. Killing Blow states, before rolling to hit for the fighter's chosen combat attacks, the controlling player may opt instead to make a single Killing Blow attack. This attack cannot be made with a weapon that has a sidearm trait. If the attack hits, the attack strength and damage are doubled and no armor save roll can be made. Let me repeat that real quick. The attack strength and damage are doubled and no armor roll can be made for that. Alright? So you might be wondering, well, Commander Chiefskate, why use this skill? Because of vehicles. That's why. Because if you trade all your attacks with this one attack to go attack an enemy vehicle, that means your cutter strength could be strength 10. Alright? And the damage is going to be 4 on that. Alright, which means this guy can one-shot most vehicles and destroy them. If anybody's driving a walker vehicle, it's going to cut right through the armor and it's going to tear it right up. If anybody is using a wasteland bike, it's going to cut right through that and kill that person as well. If anybody's operating a light type vehicle of any sort, it's going to tear through that as well. Just to give you guys an idea, this guy will be rolling 4s against attacking Cargo 8 Ridge Haulers. Same thing with Rock Grinders. Wolf Quads, he's going to be able to destroy those on a 2-up on those. For Ridge Runners, he's going to be able to destroy those on a 3-up as well. 2-up as well. So that's the reason why the Killing Blow is going to be the skill that you want to put in your cutters. I would recommend taking maximum cutters with those weapons and just let them have it on their opponents. Use the normal attacks against normal human targets, but against vehicles specifically, throw that Killing Blow and destroy those vehicles. Alright, so let's talk about your ganger level fighters in the Corpse Grinder Guild cult. These guys are called Skinners. They cost 40 credits apiece. They have 5-inch movement, 3+ weapon skill, 5+ ballistic skill. They have 3 strength, 3 toughness, 1 wound. They have 4+ initiative, 1 attack. They have 7 leadership, 7 cool, 8 willpower, as well as 9 intelligence. Now, it should be also mentioned these guys automatically come with 2 skills. First of all, they have Berserker Charge, which means that every single time they charge forward, they get 1 additional attack die. And they also are specialists. That way they can also purchase their upgrades as they want to. So there's nothing random about their character advancement. Now, for the skills that are available for your guys' Skinners, their primary skills are combat as well as savagery, which is the unique skill for Corpse Grinders. And their secondary skills are brawn as well as ferocity. Now, Skinners make excellent close combat fighters. Now, you might be thinking, well, Commander Chiefskate, they're only strength 3, toughness 3. That's true, but they have that 3-up weapon skill, and when combined with Berserker, they're going to have 2 attacks base. and you're going to give them paired weapons. So that's probably going to put them up to 4 attacks total. So usually going to be giving these guys Butcher Chain Cleavers is what I like to use for these guys. Very, very powerful weapons. Also cheaper for these guys to use as well. So they're really good that way as well. Plus, they also have Skinner Masks, which also makes it a little more survivable in combat. Your opponents will have to take a psychology stat to either shoot these guys or to engage them in close combat. So that cannot be understated. And plus, it also adds to their armor save. Now, as great as Skinners are, you can actually build an entire gang without them. You don't necessarily need to have Skinners. And the reason why is because half your gang, at least half your gang, needs to be made of Initiates. In fact, you could have your entire gang beat up with Cutters, Butchers, and Initiates and not have any Skinners at all. The reason why that is the case is because while the Skinner is good, they cannot take ranged weapons while the Initiates can, and Initiates also cost almost half as much as Skinners do. So you can see, you could actually viably have no Skinners in your gang and just have nothing but Initiates, the champion, your leader, and still be very competitive. So that's the weird thing about Skinners. If you really want to be heavy, combat heavy, and you want that extra backup for your Cutters and your Butchers, then by all means recruit Skinners if you want to. They're not absolutely necessary for your gang, however, and after I get done talking about Initiates, you'll understand why. But those are the stats on the rundown for Skinners for your Corpse Grinder Cult. Alright, so let's talk about Initiates for the Corpse Grinder Cult. These guys are your juvie level fighters, and in my opinion, these are the best fighters that you can recruit for a gang, and let's talk about why. First of all, their cost. These guys only cost 25 credits apiece, so they're actually the cost of most juvie level fighters for most gangs. But that's not what makes them impressive. Yes, the price is good, but listen to their stats. Let's talk about their stats real quick. They have a 5-inch movement. They have 4+ weapon skill, 4+ ballistic skill, which basically puts them on par with most gangers for most gangs. They have 3 strength, 3 toughness, 1 wound. They have 4 initiative, 1 attack. They have 8 leadership, 7 cool, 9 willpower, and 9 intelligence. This is why Initiates, in my opinion, are the best fighters for the value that they represent. They only cost 25 credits. And they actually have the same stat line as most gangers for most of the gangs of the Underhive. Now granted, their willpower and intelligence isn't all that great, but their cool and leadership is actually about average. It's not bad. But this is also why here's why they also go over the top with their value. So they cost 25 credits, they have ganger level stats. They also all come with infiltrate right off the bat. So these guys can use the infiltration rule and surround your enemy right off the bat. So they do have that. Plus, they have their Initiates mask, which also gives them +1 to their armor save, and they automatically come with flak armor as well. So that gives them a 5-up armor save right off the bat, and you're not spending anything more than just their initial costs. This is why Initiates are so awesome. In my opinion, you could take a nothing but Initiates for your Corpse Grinder gang and still be deadly. And the reason why is because unlike Skinners, these guys can take shooting weapons. And not only can they take shooting weapons from their starting list, but they can also purchase shooting weapons from the trading post and the black market as the campaign develops. Which means you can give these guys even better weapons in the future. Because these guys have no weapon restrictions. Alright, which means they can take heavy weapons if they want to. Because they have no weapon restrictions whatsoever. And that makes them extremely, extremely deadly. In fact, when you go into the Ash Waste, this should be your #1 focus for the Ash Waste as well. Plus, the weapons they can get are actually not bad. They can get stub guns with dum-dum rounds, give them that 4-up strength for their shooting attacks. They can do the same thing with auto pistols with man-stopper rounds and do exactly the same thing. Or they can cause some more damage with fragmentation rounds for their auto pistols as well. They can take flamers, harpoon launchers, heavy flamers right off their shopping list off the bat. They can take grenades of all sorts as well. But perhaps the best thing to actually equip these guys with is the Boning Sword. The Boning Sword, in my opinion, is the best close combat weapon for the price. It costs 20 credits in order to purchase that weapon, so it puts it on par for a normal sword. So granted, that's true, but here's where the difference is between a Boning Sword and a sword. Both cost the same amount of points, both use the user strength, but the Boning Sword has a -2 armor piercing value as well as 2 damage. It also does parry as well as melee, and it also does rending as well in case you roll a 6 on that. You can't beat that. The Boning Sword is absolutely the best close combat weapon you can purchase for a gang. And for these Initiates, because of the low cost, you can buy a bunch of these for Initiates and still be able to own the close combat phase with these guys as well. Plus, give them even better better shooting weapons as the campaign even further develops. So like I said before, Initiates are a very, very powerful choice, and in fact, they're my favorite aspect of a Corpse Grinder cult. Alright, so now that we're done talking about the different fighters for the Corpse Grinder cult, let's talk about the army list. So the very first one I like to call the Serenity /FIREFLY Reavers list. So any of you guys who are browncoats out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This list costs 1,395 credits in order to field. So let's go through the rundown. First of all, you got a butcher in your gang. This guy's going to cost you 210 credits. He's going to be equipped with the Butcher's Mask, Plate Mail Armor, Paired Butchers, Chain Cleavers, as well as a Commanding Presence ability, so that way you can do larger group activations. You'll have 2 cutters in this list, cutter number 1 and 2. They're both equipped exactly the same. Both cost 145 credits. Both have Cutter's Masks, Plate Mail Armor, Rotary Flensing Saws, and Killing Blow. Like we talked about earlier with Killing Blow, having that strength 10, 4 damage for 1 attack if you land it on a 3-up, very doable by the way with a 4-inch range, you could tear vehicles apart with that attack. After that, you'll have 2 Skinners. You have Skinner number 1 and 2. Both these guys cost 120 credits apiece. Both are equipped exactly the same with Skinner's Masks, Plate Mail Armor, and Paired Butcher's Chain Cleavers. These are going to add a little more oomph to your close combat in support of the Cutters as well as the Butcher. And then you're going to have 3 Initiates. All 3 of these Initiates cost 65 credits apiece. All 3 are equipped exactly the same. All 3 will have Initiates Masks. All will have 3 will have Flak Armor, Auto Pistols, Man-Stopper Rounds, and Boning Swords. And at the same time, you'll also have 2 Scum Racers. Scum Racer number 1 and 2 are equipped exactly the same. Both of them will be using custom medium vehicles. As well, those vehicles will also have transport beds. Both those vehicles will have smoke vents to give you -1 to hit against when you're being shot against you. Those transport beds will help to transport your troops. Both will have nitro burners for +1 to their movement characteristic. Both will have tire claws to give you +1 to their handling. And both will have boarding ramps to give you +1 to initiative tests for your fighters to board enemy vehicles. And both those Scum Racers cost exactly 230 credits apiece. You are taking a little bit of credits out of your starting gang to give your vehicles better equipment, but it's part of the tactics of why you use these guys. Now, this list is a good all-around build and lets you try out all aspects of what a Corpse Grinder cult does have to offer. The tactic for this gang is pretty much like you would see in the movies FIREFLY and Serenity when it comes to Reavers. Your idea is to use your medium vehicles to close distance as quickly as possible with your enemies, engage your enemy through boarding actions, have your fighters board the enemy vehicles, and defeat them in close combat, just like Reavers would do in FIREFLY as well as Serenity. Now, your gang consists of 2 assault fire teams. Your first assault fire team number 1 consists of your Butcher, Cutter number 1, Skinner number 1, Initiate number 1, Initiate number 2, and Scum Racer number 1. Assault fire team number 2 will consist of Cutter number 2, Skinner number 2, and Initiate number 3. Both fire teams move as quickly as possible towards the enemy for boarding actions and close combat. The nitro burners and tire claws on the medium vehicles will get you there with a +1 movement and +1 to the handling. Plus the smoke vent on your vehicle, just like it shows in the picture here, will throw off enemy shooting and give you -1 to hit against you when they try to shoot at you. At the same time, I suggest you also invest in smoke launchers as soon as possible for your vehicles to add a little bit more cover for your fighters as well. Now, the boarding ramp will provide a +1 initiative bonus for boarding actions, so that way you can kill your enemies in close combat and get on their vehicles better. Once again, Killing Blow for the Cutters is so that their Rotary Flensing Saws can take out enemy light, medium, dustbacks, as well as dirt bike mounted fighters with 1 shot. 4-inch range attacks at strength 10, -2 AP, and 4 damage is no joke. Make sure you get them in range and let them go crazy with those flensing saws on your enemy. And of course, as the campaign develops, purchase heavier weapons for your vehicles to do some more heavy firepower and engage your enemies at a distance. I suggest auto cannons and mining lasers is what I would suggest for that one. So this one is what I like to call the Serenity FIREFLY Reavers list, and quote all the FIREFLY and Serenity lines that you want to as you do this, because they killed us, but we're still here, which makes us mighty. Now, this next list I call the Gimme Fuel, Gimme Fire, Gimme That Which I Desire list. And yes, it's based off the song by Metallica. And as you can see, we got Warboys from Mad Max Fury Road in the background with flames. This costs you 1,400 credits in order to fill this list. So let's talk about what you're bringing on this one. First of all, you have a Butcher who's equipped at 210 credits with Butcher's Mask, Plate Mail Armor, Paired Butcher Chain Cleaver, and once again, Commanding Presence. Then you have 2 Cutters, both equipped exactly the same at 145 credits with Cutter's Masks, Plate Mail Armor, Rotary Flensing Saws, and Killing Blow, because that is just the OP combo right there. Now, you will have 4 Initiates. All 4 Initiates will cost you exactly the same at 120 credits apiece. All 4 are equipped exactly the same with Initiates Masks, Flak Armor, Hand Flamers, and Boning Swords. Now, you will also recruit a Guild of Coin Hauler at 420 credits. So you're taking 20 credits away from your gang to add it to your vehicle. Your Guild of Coin Hauler will have a Cargo 8 Ridge Hauler, which will be equipped with a Promethean tank. It also has a grenade launcher on the front of it, as well as tire claws, smoke vents, as well as smoke launchers. The tire claws will give you +1 to your handling, the smoke vents will make enemy shots at you -1 to hit against, and the smoke launchers will be able to throw out smoke grenades in order to protect your fighters if they should dismount. Oddly enough, this list is actually more of a defensive build rather than an offensive build. And the reason why is because you don't receive any bonus actions to board enemy vehicles, so you'll be staying pretty close to your cargo 8 ridge hauler most of the time at the very beginning of the campaign. Unfortunately, you can't buy a boarding ramp for the cargo ridge hauler because it's not available in starting war gear. But you can get war gear later on, right after your first scenario. In fact, your first purchase, make it a boarding plank. Now, your gang will consist of 2 fire teams, 1 assault fire team and 1 support fire team. Your assault fire team will consist of your butcher as well as cutters number 1 and 2. This fire team's job is to fight dismounted if necessary or board enemy vehicles, get them into close combat as quickly as possible. The cargo 8 ridge hauler smoke vents and smoke launchers should be able to provide enough cover to do that, especially if they gotta fight dismounted. Now, once again, the killing blow for the cutters is the main focus for those guys. Using those rotary and flensing saws could take out enemy light vehicles, medium vehicles, it could take out death bike helamites, as well as dirt bike mounted fighters. A 4-inch range attack at strength 10, -2 AP, and 4 damage is a beast, and you can take out vehicles with just 1 shot if you're lucky. So make sure you get those cutters within range, at least 4 inches, so they can hit with their rotary saws. Now, your support fire team consists of initiates 1 through 4, as well as your Guild of Coin Hauler. The Guild of Coin Hauler uses the cargo 8 ridge hauler's grenade launcher to provide suppressing fire with frag and crack grenades. However, it's the initiates with their hand flamers that do most of the shooting because of the Promethean tank. Now, Promethean tanks could really help them out to make sure they don't run out of ammunition, because if they should fail their ammo roll, the Promethean tank refills it and gives the scarcity trait plentiful instead, so they can always shoot those hand flamers no matter what. The initiates can also perform boarding actions if necessary as well, so keep that in mind, but they mainly stay on the cargo 8 ridge hauler protecting it. In addition, the cargo 8 ridge hauler will also provide passive income with D310 credits normally and D6 times 10 credits for its Promethean tank at the end of every round. Not to mention the Promethean tank can also become an offensive weapon if it gets shot by enemies, so you do have that going for you as well. Just a whole kit of win with fuel, flames, and death. So who doesn't like that in the Ash Waste? I mean, seriously, witness me. Now, the very last list I have on this one I like to call the Warboy list. This, once again, is inspired by Mad Max Fury Road. This list is going to cost you 1,395 credits. So, once again, the Butcher and the Cutters are pretty much the same through all 3 lists. The Butcher costs 210 credits. He's got Butcher's Mask, Plate Mill Armor, Paired Butcher Chain Cleavers, and Commanding Presence. Cutters 1 and 2 both cost 145 credits apiece. Both have Cutter's Mask, Plate Armors, Rotary Flensing Saws, as well as Killing Blow. Now, this is where the difference comes in, though. Initiate number 1 is going to cost you 175 credit. This fighter has Initiate's Mask, Flak Armor. This guy is also packing a Flamer, as well as a Stub Gun with Dum Dum rounds. Initiate number 2 is going to cost you 145 credits. This Initiate's got Initiate's Mask, Flak Armor, Harpoon Launcher, Stub Gun, as well as Dum Dum rounds. And then finally, you got Initiates 3, 4, and 5. These guys are equipped exactly the same at 55 credits apiece. All 3 will be equipped with Initiate's Masks, Flak Armor, Stub Gun with Dum Dum rounds for 4 strength shooting, as well as boning swords for obvious reasons. Now, for your vehicle on this one, you will operate a Guild of Coin Haulers. It will cost you 410 credits. You'll be taking 10 credits out of your starting game to add that to your vehicle. You're going to operate a cargo 8 ridge hauler with a Munitorium armored container on the back of it, with a grenade launcher as well as smoke vents. The smoke vents will give you -1 against the hit against you when an enemy tries to shoot at you, plus the Munitorium armor container gives you some buffs as well. Now, this list, like I said before, was inspired by Mad Max Fury Road's War Rig as well as the Warboys. For those of you guys who've seen that film, they actually drive around this massive truck and they fight from the back of it, protecting the cargo that they take across the wasteland. That's exactly what your gang is going to do as well. Now, the tactic for this gang is pretty simple. Close the distance with your cargo 8 ridge hauler and attack the enemy and take them out as best that you can. Now, your gang consists of 2 fire teams, 1 support fire team, and 1 assault fire team. Your support fire team will consist of your Guild of Coin Hauler, Initiate number 1 and Initiate number 2. The Guild of Coin Hauler provides longer range fire with their grenade launcher, while Initiate 1 and 2 protect the cargo 8 ridge hauler from enemy attack, using their flamer as well as their harpoon launcher. The Munitorium armor container provides 2 new weapon hardpoints as well, which can be outfitted with heavier weapons later on, so you can get more initiates to man those weapons. And the armored container is also an ammo cache with unlimited ammo resources, so that will definitely help you out, especially if you run out of ammunition for your flamer or for your harpoon launcher. They can get it directly from the Munitorium armor container. Same thing with heavy weapons that you'll put on those hard points later on. That's definitely going to help you because it'll give you 360-degree field of fire. I suggest auto cannons or mining lasers for those later on. Now, your assault fire team will consist of your butcher, your 2 cutters, and initiatives 3 through 5. This fire team's job is to fight, dismount if necessary, or board enemy vehicles, and get them into close combat as quickly as possible. The Cargo 8 Ridge Hauler Smoke Vent should provide enough cover in order to do that for that -1 hit against as you move up closer, but your very first purchase for this vehicle when you get done is a smoke launcher and a boarding plank. Get the boarding plank first, but if you got enough credits, get a smoke launcher as well, because it's really going to help you out as well. Now, once again, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record saying this, but killing blow with a cutter using that rotary flensing saw is OP as all get out. Light, medium vehicles, dustback Helamites, dirt bikes, wolf quads, iron riders, those guys are not going to have any chance whatsoever. But that 4-inch range, strength 10 -2 AP, 4 damage, you're just going to tear it up all over the battlefield. You're going to wreck medium to light vehicles like it's nobody's business. So go at it. Just make them just, destroying them with that thing. It'd be awesome, all kinds. Now, once engaged with enemies, cut them to shreds for the glory of the gods. Also, it also helps if you screen witness me before you do it, because why not at this point? And that one makes up what I like to call the Warboy list. So, in conclusion, the Corpse Grinder Cult is still a very devastating gang. Now, granted, they do have some severe handicaps this round around because there's a lot more open space and a lot more fields of fire this time around. And a lot of the Underhive tricks that you used to use in the Underhive will not be able to work in the Ashways too well. But because of that, all you need to do is adapt. And as you can see, the adaptations I suggest in this list is really going to help you out. Having access to heavy weapons on your vehicles to fire at your enemies is going to be very, very important. Having your initiatives, meaning most of the crew members in those vehicles operate those weapons, very, very much so. I still think that the Butcher can operate heavy weapons, but if your Arbitrator says no, just get an initiate to take their place, and that's perfectly fine as well. Not to mention, you can also have all kinds of cool things like flamers and explosive weapons and scarce weapons. This could be awesome because you have those Cargo 8 Ridge Haulers to help you out. So, with that being said, even though there's got some handicaps, even though you gotta make adaptations, you're still got an insane gang to play with some great game mechanics. So paint them up, build your vehicles, decorate them with some corpses and some bones, paint them up bright red because that's what a Corpse Grinder Cult would do, road up and bring it to the ash wastes. So that's going to do it for this week, guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's going to do it for this week, guys. We will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out and stay classy.